Plus from 7 a.m.
Welcome back. Well, exiled Senator Fatima Payman has officially quit the Labor Party, defecting to the Senate crossbench, where she'll continue to advocate for Palestinian statehood. Joining us to discuss today's headlines is Independent MP Dai Li and Editor-in-Chief of Stella magazine, Sarah Marquand, both in the studio with me. Good to see you both. Di, I'll start with you. Senator Payman has really inflicted maximum pain here on her former party, hasn't she?
Look, I think so. I mean, I think that I understand that in the Labor Party you're supposed to not cross the floor, and she did that, made that decision to cross the floor. But, you know, from my perspective, as an independent member of Parliament, you need to go, if you are an independent, you then should go as an independent first and foremost. Yeah. But if you belong to a party, then that's why you choose to be part of a party and campaign and get elected on the party ticket. And you understand that, right? So this is going to be interesting, how that's going to pan out for the Labor Party, what's going to happen to them. And, yeah, so it's interesting because I know that there's all these votes around religion stuff.
Yeah, the issue with sectarianism.
Yeah, and I think that...
Do you think that's a valid concern, or should it be?
I believe we're there to represent the views of our community. For me, at the moment, in Fowler, our focus is on the cost of living. Yeah. That's the priority for us. Mums and dads, you know, putting food on the table, going to work. I don't even think that majority of my community are that connected to what's going on at the moment.
Globally,
they're just focusing on working. So that's going to be a challenge for members of Parliament.
Sarah, Di's point about, you know, Fatima was elected, obviously, off the back of the Labor ticket. That is a point of contention now for the Labor Party. I mean, they're even dredging up things like the citizenship issue, which seems a bit spiteful to you, do you think, or...
Well, I think there's sort of three things going on that's been brought up by this issue in the past week. The first one, as Di's just talked about, is this notion of this binding caucus requirement of the Labor Party, and that you can't exercise a conscience vote, and that crossing the floor, as Senator Payman has done, is essentially really grounds for expulsion.
Should that be changed, do you think? Because we want to know what our politicians actually think, don't we?
I believe it should be changed, but I also think it is complicated in that it has been in place for a very, very long time. And, I mean, you could almost have an entire discussion just on this issue, quite a few of them. But I think one example that springs to mind for me is that the Labor Party, for instance, had a binding position for several years that they opposed the legalisation of same-sex marriage. And you had people like... Penny Wong, for instance, that were bound by that, but she used to say she would sort of rationalise it, if you like, because it also meant that conservative people in the Labor Party, men especially that, say, came from a strict Catholic background, were not able to oppose legalisation of abortion in Australia. So I understand why it's in place. I think the second issue it's brought up is, of course, the complicated issue of the Middle East and the two-state solution. The third one is, now are we in a position where we're going to have religious divisiveness is an election issue? I'd hate to see that.
I hate to see that too. I just think that, you know, Australia is a multicultural and multi-faith society, and I think that's something that we should celebrate. I don't think that, you know, we should campaign on that ground of, you know, this religion or that religion. It's just so divisive.
And it's just political fodder now as well. I mean, Peter Dunn's coming out saying that it might lead to a hung election, and that if elected again, Labor Party will be, you know, at the mercy of the Greens, for example, and Senator Payman. But I just want to ask you as well, Di, about that protest, the pro-Palestinian protest yesterday at Parliament House. You were there. What was that like?
Well, it was. I was actually in the building, going up to an interview when it was on this news about the you know, all the protesters on the top of the building. It was concerning for me, first place. I'm thinking, oh my God, how did they... Because if you've been to Canberra and you see the building, it's really high.
It is, it's scary. I mean, this is Parliament House we're talking about. How did they even get up there?
That's right.
There's supposed to be better security than that.
Exactly, security. So therefore, for me, if those people were able to get into the building and climb that high, what would happen to the security of parliamentarians and other staff, the staff in working in Canberra as well? So that was quite shocking. Didn't realise. I mean, of course, people have the right to protest. That's what we have in Australia. That's the fantastic thing about living in a democracy. But where it's done and how it's done, we just need to be very mindful because, yeah, it was very concerning for many of us.
All right. Well, just finally, obviously, we've got the UK election. The polls are about to close. This will be interesting. Labor's set to deliver a landslide victory in a matter of hours. Sarah, we're seeing Europe kind of swing to the right, but not in the UK's case.
No, I know. Look, I just think this is what happens in every country when one party is in power for a very long time. Countries like Australia, the UK, even the United States, actually what divides us is a lot less than what we think.
Yeah.
And so it just then swings the other way. And I think really it's just incumbency, isn't it? I think you could have put up Joe Biden or Donald Trump and either of them would have romped it in.
Well,
as soon as they went to sitting
Keir and Rishi isn't quite Biden and Trump, is it, Dad? It's not quite the same thing.
Yeah, but 14 years of Conservative. So, as Sarah said, you know, it's that whole incumbency for so long.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me this morning.